Yo, what's up guys? Coach Geetster here, and this is my launch tech guide. In this video, I'm going to be going over every type of launch tech that I'm currently using in tournaments, how to do them, and more importantly, when to use them. Now, if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you'd like to support me further, check out my Metafy link down in the description for some coaching and extra content. Now, getting into this guide, like I mentioned before, I'm not going to be going too much into how to do these launches because every blader has different setups for the launchers. Some bladers use strings, some bladers use winders, some use grips, some don't. There's so many different factors that go into actually doing the launch tech because of this that I can't help you do the launch tech exactly. I can give you a general idea and that's what I'm going to be doing, but I can't tell you exactly how to do it. You got to find the way that works for you the best. So that'll be a little bit of homework for you guys that watch my videos. Now, before we get into everything else here, I just want to say that launch tech does not guarantee wins. No matter how good you get at this, you will lose games no matter what. Whether it be you slightly mess it up or you will pick the wrong launch tech to use. There's so many different factors that go into Beyblade X, and there is also a degree of randomness that goes into Beyblade X. So not everything is guaranteed. All launch tech does is help push the odds in your favor, but those odds, no matter what, will never be 100 to 0. So no matter what, you always have a chance to lose. Launch tech does not guarantee you a win. So don't stress too hard on learning how to do this stuff and wanting to do it perfectly to the exact millimeter every time. Getting the idea is the best thing you can do to save your mental throughout tournaments. Otherwise, you're going to get tilted out and just not have a good time. So with that, let's talk about some basic launches first, and then get into more advanced strategies later. Now, out of the styles of launches that I use in tournaments, there's two that I would classify as basic launches. These are the flat launch and the forward angle. Now, for those of you that have been playing for a while, this may seem almost out of place for a video like this, but these are what all other launch tech are built off of. So knowing these fundamental launching styles is very important, even if you are a very experienced player. Now, for those of you that are just new to the competitive scene, I wouldn't even worry about things that are going to come later in the video until you master these two styles of launches first. I think these two styles of launches are even good enough to get you a decent record in a tournament if you use them correctly. So making sure you get these two launches down first before you jump into other more advanced things is going to be the best thing for you in your competitive journey. Now, the flat launch has two different movement patterns depending on what type of Beyblade you're using. For attack types, you're going to circle the inner ridge first and then leave and hit the extreme line. For stamina and defense types, you may just directly sit in the middle or you'll circle around in the center for a little bit before settling down in the middle. Now, for this launch, you're just going to keep your launcher hand steady and flat, and you're just going to pull as hard as you can, aiming for that inner section of the stadium. Now, what this launch achieves for attack types, it gives you a safe path to the extreme line. So when you get to the extreme line this way, using the inner ridge, you're less likely to actually self-extreme or self-over finish because your bait is guided gently onto the rail. It's not going to get thrown into there very awkwardly. It's not going to throw itself out. It also lets you counter the reverse dash or a drop launch this way because of where you leave the inner ridge normally. You'll end up running directly into their path and disrupting their pattern. Now, for stamina and defense types, you're typically going to do this launch if you're trying to maximize your stamina or balance. This is the best way to minimize the amount of stamina you lose. If you angle your Beyblade really hard, you're going to lose a bunch of stamina that way when you're using any style of bit, ball, especially things that are pointed like needle bits or like high needle, hexa. These style bits, when angled, are going to be losing a bunch of stamina at the beginning of the battle. So if you're trying to maximize the amount of spin that you have, you're just going to flat launch them flat into the middle of the stadium. Now let's check out a video to show off the flat launch. Now, just to show off how these launches work, this is a pure stamina matchup. This is my Rod 660 Hexa going up against a Wolf on Low Orb. There's nothing special that's going on here. Both of us are just trying to get our Beyblade to spin the longest. So you can see that my hand is just nice and steady, and I'm going to pull as hard as I can, landing my wizard rod in the center of the stadium here. Now, I'm not going to play the full video here. These bays are going to spin for a while. These are two pretty high stamina bays. So, like I said, just for stamina and defense types, if you're just flat launching, you're just going to launch as hard as you can in the center of the stadium to maintain as much stamina as possible. Now, this next matchup here is my attack type. So this is a Arrow Pegasus going up against a Rod Hexa, I believe. Now, in this video, we're going to show off how the flat launch guides you onto the extreme line in a nice, gentle way that'll maintain a good X dash, but keep you away from self-extreming and things like that. So we're just going to flat launch. We get one X dash off. When we get a second one, that's going to get the over finish. But the bay was just guided onto the rail nicely. No fears of self-extreming, anything like that. Now this last one is up against another attack type, and my opponent here is going to attempt a reverse dash. So their bay is going to end up in this corner over here. They're going to be aiming to land over here with an angle. And we're going to show off how the flat launch can actually counter this. So you may have seen this in some of my other videos and some of the combo guides. We're just going to flat launch and meet our opponent up here, disrupt their pattern, and just throw them around. So we were able to counter one of the more advanced launch tech styles with just a simple flat launch that anyone can pull off. So don't write off these simple launches. Like I said, they're very important, and that's a couple reasons why they are. Now let's check out the next launch. So the other basic launch style I have to present to you guys is the forward angle launch. Now for this launch, you're just going to tilt your launcher hand forward, trying your best to match the angle of the center of the stadium, and you're going to pull as hard as you can and aim close to the inner ridge of the stadium, so about around here. And this is just going to throw your bay forward and push it towards the center of the stadium, and this will happen with all types of bays. For B side, it's just going to go from here to here. That's represented in blue. And then for X side in red, it's just going to go from here to here. Basically does the same thing, but slightly different on both sides just because it's not going to follow the same path. What this launch achieves, it helps you initiate contact early in the center. So if you think your opponent's bay is going to be in the middle and you want to hit them as early as possible, this is the best launch to pick. It keeps your bay away from the extreme line. So if you're using an attack type, and you forward angled like this, you're going to stall in the center of the stadium for a couple seconds before you actually go up to the extreme line and do an extreme dash. This helps preserve some stamina. Typically in attack versus attack, if you think it's going to go to stamina, doing something like this will help you get that spin finish. And lastly, it lowers your bay to protect from upper attacks. So since you're angled forward, if you think your opponent's going to do something similar, you're going to meet at the center with the same angle, which means that your bay, especially your blade, is going to be lower to the stadium floor, meaning it's going to be harder for them to get up and under you. Now let's check out some clips and show off how the forward angle works in battle. So hopping into this next clip here, we're going to show off the forward angle launch. This is my Arrow Pegasus on the left going up against a Shark Scale on the right. I typically choose this launch when I believe my opponent is actually going to do the same thing. And on X side for me over here, I'm typically using this to just dodge my opponent. So I'm going to try to get myself away from them. Let's put this arrow in a different color so we can differentiate. So my opponent's launch is going to be in this pink color here. I'm going to try to dodge them if I believe they're going for this early contact. And we definitely like picking this launch against Shark Scale because they're an upper attacker. Like I said, you'll be lower down to the stadium, and it'll be harder for them to get up and under you. Now, we're going to pause here, and you can see that my Air Pegasus is pretty much matched with this center bowl. My opponent's Shark Scale is a bit too far angled forward, especially with them on 760. So by the end of this pattern, they're going to scrape at the top of the bowl while we will not. This will help maintain stamina and help us not get trapped in the center of the bowl. We don't want to get trapped in here. We just want to spend maybe a couple seconds here before we actually move to the outside of the stadium with their attack type. If you do this with a stamina or defense type, you're going to end up scraping and then spending too much time to stabilize. So you're going to lose a bunch of stamina that way. So our opponent gets trapped in the stadium, and we're going to get a KO, but they're going to pop out. Shark Scale's good at doing that, so we're not going to worry too much about it. Still a positive result for us, still a point. So let's check out some advanced launches now. So moving forward, these are the advanced launches that I use in tournaments. These launches all implement some parts of these basic launches that we went over earlier. These launches are going to be the light launch, drop launch, slide drop launch, reverse dash, bump launch, which is something that I think I came up with. I might be wrong, but this is what I'm calling it. And then same thing with this last launch, the sweeper. These last two launches, I'm sure you've seen in some of my other combo guides. If you haven't, make sure you check those out as well. But these two launches are something that I think I came up with. The other four are more commonly known. The first launch that we have here is the light launch. Now, this is only going to be really used for stamina or defense types, and it's going to be pretty similar to the flat launch. Like I said, all these other advanced launches build off of these basic ones. So this one, same thing. You're going to keep your hand flat and steady, and you're going to pull, instead of at full power, you're going to pull at around 60 to 70%. And then you may change this depending on the matchup you're going up against. So some attack types have more stamina than others, so you're going to have to pull harder in those matchups to make sure you don't lose by spin finish. What this launch achieves is it's going to lower the total amount of energy between both bays during contact. So if both bays are spinning very fast and when they hit each other, there's going to be a lot of energy that's put into the collision. So both bays are going to get knocked back further and things like that. But if one of the bays is spinning slower, there's just less energy overall between the two Beyblades. So with the contact, you're going to get less knockback and things like that. And this is going to reduce the amount of recoil that you take, the amount of distance you're knocked back by an attack, things like that. So this is a defensive strategy, mainly used by stamina and defense types, to ensure that they stay in the stadium against some of the strongest attacks in the game. So let's check out how the light launch works in a tournament setting. So hopping into this next clip here, I'm going to be on the left with a Wizard Rod on Hexa combo, going up against an Aero Pegasus. Now, you can see that my launcher hand here is pretty flat. Just like I said, you're just going to flat launch this, but you're just not going to launch as hard. Now, in this matchup, I'm going to be aiming to launch around 75-80% because Aero Pegasus does have a lot more stamina. But if this was something like a Phoenix Wing that has a lot less, maybe you can go around 60 to 70 like I suggested earlier. And the reason I go for just a generic flat launch here with this weak launch, nothing too crazy, is that I can tell that my opponent isn't going to be going for anything like a drop launch or anything like that. And that's because I'm reading their hands as well as making sure that mine are right. For those of you that are having trouble learning how to read your opponent's launches, here's a little tip for you guys that are sticking around and listening to everything that I have to say. The easiest way to read your opponent's launch, if they're using a ripcord or winder launcher, is by looking at their ripcord here. So I can tell that their ripcord is angled down and pointing this way, so I know that their launch is going to do something similar to this. This ripcord just turns into a giant like arrow that's going to point you in the direction of where they're going to go. And I can tell they're not going to try any sort of corner staller like that, anything like that, because their hands are too far into the center. If their hands are further back, then I would think more drop launch or something like that, and I might adjust accordingly. But since I think they're just going to basically forward angle this, they're going to just tilt forward and probably end up around here. I'm just going to light launch, like I said before. And I predict the launch perfectly. Just like I said, follow that ripcord. It'll guide you to where they're going to go. They're getting some okay hits, but nothing that is substantial, like nothing that pushed us towards the pockets, nothing that even pushed us over the extreme line, and they're going to fall over and lose by spin finish. But that's the goal. We're not trying to get any more points out of this launch. We're just trying to survive. That's why this is a tactic only used by stamina and defense types against attack types. You're not going to be doing this in any other situation. You're just trying to minimize the amount of energy that is between the two bays, so when they get their good contact, it's not going to knock us back too far. Now let's check out the next launch. So next launch we're going to be discussing is the drop launch. This is probably the most popular form of launch tech in Beyblade X. You're going to tilt your launcher hand and you're trying to match the angle of the outside of the stadium instead of the inside. So instead of this inner section of the bowl here, we're going to be matching this angle, and then we're going to pull and try to make sure our bay lands within this section between the extreme line and the inner ridge here. This is just going to let your bay slowly move around the rail, stall up in this corner, and then drop back down into the middle of the stadium. What this launch achieves, for attack types, it's going to set your bay up to be pointed towards the pockets, so you can point your opponents towards the pockets, make sure that you score a good over or extreme finish. And it also helps you dodge early contact with your opponent in the attack versus attack mirrors. It does the same thing for stamina types as well. You can do this style of stall that's going to probably avoid like 1, maybe 2 X dashes at the most. And then it's also going to get you further away from the pockets. So if your opponent takes an X dash, they bounce off the wall here and end back up in the middle. You're going to come back down and potentially hit them. Um, since you're using a stamina or defense type, it's more likely that you're not going to actually KO them or anything, but you're going to force the contact over on this side. So if you get hit, you're going to hit the back walls and stuff like that, and you're going to stay in the stadium. So let's check out some drop launches and show off what this does for you in a match. All right, so this first drop launch we're going to have here is going to be with a stamina type. So me on the right side with Wolf on low orb, going up against Pegasus Blast on low rush, I believe. Um, main thing here is we're just trying to avoid very early contact. I find it's best to do the drop launch mixed with the light launch that we talked about previously. This way that even if there is early contact or you just mess up the launch, you still fall back onto that light launch and you can still reliably defend. A lot of the ways that I launch, we make sure that if we mess up the initial launch we're going for, we still have something to bank on. So we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. If I hard launch trying to do the drop launch, I mess it up. Well, now I just hard launched in the middle of the stadium. That's not ideal. But if I light launch while trying to do drop launch, if I mess up the drop launch, it still works out. So we're going to read our opponent's launch. Let's go back. We can see using their ripcord again, we're going to see that they're going to be tilting forward. So we're just going to try to get out of the way of this initial hit. We don't want to get sniped off the bat and lose that. So we're just going to pull ourselves out of the way and avoid the first attack. And now we've light launched, and the wolf is going to keep itself in the stadium for the rest of the battle, and it's going to win by spin finish. So main goal for the drop launch from a stamina perspective is just moving out of the way of your opponent early on. Don't want to get hit by their strongest attacks, so we're going to move out of the way. Now this one here is a shark mirror match. I am on the left. And here we do the drop launch because I see my opponent doing an angle. They actually adjust right before the launch starts. So I am going to adjust to that as well. If I thought they were going to stay flat, I wouldn't want to launch the drop launch in this because, like I said earlier, that kind of counters it. So once I see them adjust their launcher here, I'm assuming that now they're going to go for this kind of backwards tilted angle, and I know the drop launch is going to be safe. And we're going to stall in this top corner. We're going to miss their first attack, and they're going to self-extreme because they don't get a good track onto the rail. So we use the drop launch to avoid contact and maybe initiate it later. This last matchup here is going up against a Wizard Rod Hexa. I'm on Shark Scale again on the left side. And we are using the drop launch here to set up a good attack into our opponent towards the pockets. So I read their launch. I believe they're going to be launching flat. So I know that they'll be parked in the center of the stadium here. And if we do the drop launch properly, we'll get a decent hit off. But like I said before, we want to make sure our launch tech isn't too committed into one style of launch. Because let's say I messed up the drop launch here. It's still a forward angle at the minimum, which is still a fine launch to do into this matchup. So even if we mess up the launch, we still get something that is beneficial to us. So that's why I say you don't want to spend too much time focusing on being insanely precise with these. It's worth it in the long run, but when you're still learning, don't be too worried about getting these launches perfect. So we're going to set up and we're going to get one good setup hit and put him by the pocket, and we're going to get the over finish with the second hit. So that's just the basics of the drop launch and how it's used in a tournament setting. So let's check out the next launch that we have lined up for us. So next launch we have here to check out is the slide drop. Now this is pretty similar to the regular drop launch. This one is just done from X side and is commonly only used by attack types. Now, this one you're going to be tilting your launcher hand towards the center of the stadium, and you're going to be pushing your launcher towards the section of the ridge that is shorter on the launch. Now, if you're not sure what that means, if you look at the center of the stadium with this inner ridge, these sections around here and here are slightly shorter than the sections around the bowl, like here and here. And that is normally there to allow the bays to go around the ridge and out to make an extreme dash. But for us, we're going to be using it to get our bay up and over the ridge and then use it to stall in the corner here. Now, what this launch does for us, it's going to set up our bay just like a normal drop launch. So it's going to set us up for an attack towards the pockets against our opponent. And it also can counter the drop launch by getting behind the opponent. Now, this allows us to either drop down second and hit them there, or it lets us hit them up in this hill here, disrupting their pattern, pinching them between the rail and our own Beyblade, and this will send them out sometimes towards the over extreme zone. So let's check out how the slide drop is used in tournament play. So for the slide drop launch, we're going to have two separate clips. One will be attack versus stamina or defense, and the other one will be attack versus attack. Now, in this first clip here, we are on Hover Wyvern 960 kick, and we are going up against a Wizard Rod on Hexa. Hover Wyvern utilizes the slide drop a lot because of the angle that Hover Wyvern needs to attack at. Being able to do the slide drop with it is very beneficial. It allows you to line up your opponent, get the correct angle to make sure the contact points are engaged, and just gets you the good attacks, like I said. So we are going to line up here. Since my opponent is looking like they're going to just be flat launching, I know that the slide drop is going to be open and be usable. So we are going to pause here. You can see that my bay is tilted towards the center of the stadium, and I put it on a path to ride this way. So it's going to go from here to here. And this is the section of the stadium we're aiming for because this is where the lip of the ridge is shorter. So now we're going to use this pattern to get up to the hill here to stall, and this sets up Hover Wyvern perfectly. One attack there, and then we get a good upper attack into the over zone. Now this next clip here, we are on Pegasus Blast, Wheel, and Low Rush, and I believe we're going up against an Arrow Pegasus here. Like I said before in other clips, we want to use this ripcord to read our opponent's launch. And since now, instead of the other clip that we watched earlier, where it looked like their hands were further into the center, our opponent's hands here are further back. So this tips off in my mind that they're going to do the drop launch. And in this matchup, I'm going to choose to slide drop to counter them. So we can see they do the drop launch here. They stall here, but we are behind them. So no matter what time they decide to drop down, or not that they get to pick what time they drop down, just whenever they drop down, we will drop second behind them or make contact with them up here like we said earlier. So we're going to get a early contact and it's going to cause a burst. So let's just go all the way back to that initial contact here. Slow this down just a bit. So we were the ones that set up where the contact happened, not our opponent. Our opponent was hoping for us to miss an extreme dash and end up getting contacted in the middle, and then we'd be on the back foot. But since we initiated contact with our slide drop, we are ahead in the matchup. We get the good contact that sets up the burst finish here, winning us the points. Now let's check out the next launch that we have lined up. So next launch we have here is the reverse dash. Now this one is typically done with only stamina and defense types, and I have two variations of it that I use. One that rides the rail longer, and one that cuts the distance and is very short. And this just depends on the matchup. I can talk about it more once we get to the video. The way we're going to do this, we're going to tilt our launcher hand to match the outside of the stadium, and we're going to aim the land between the ridge and the extreme line. You may need to give the bay a little bit of a push to make sure it gets on the right track to start reverse dashing. What this does for us, it's going to avoid early contact, especially in the center of the stadium, and you can counter the drop launch of your opponent goose for that because of the same thing we did with the slide drop, where you get behind your opponent, because now you'll be lined up with the back wall once their initial drop ends, instead of being caught in the middle when it happens. Now let's check out some clips of the reverse dash. So for the reverse dash, we're going to have two separate clips, one for each variation. This first clip is going to be the longer version. This clip is a bit older, so I'm on the right with Wizard Rod on ball. And on the launch, we start around this post and we're going to go all the way around. To do the longer variation, you're going to have to launch a bit harder than I would like personally, but since you're going to be using so much time to get out of the way, you'll lose spin that way and you'll be about that 60-70% or so that you are looking to be at once we enter the center of the stadium. Um, this one is a bit more risky. If you mess this launch up, you can potentially self-over finish or set yourself up for over or an extreme. So this launch I would stay away from. If you want to learn the reverse dash, start doing the shorter variation first. That one is a lot less risky, and then go to the longer one second. So here we have the short variation. I'm on Wizard Rod Hex here in this video. And we're going to launch, and we launch pretty light. I would say you can get the reverse dash off at about 70% power. Um, and the difference between these two variations here, uh, the longer variation started about here. The shorter one started about here. Now, this might not seem like too much of a distance to make much of a difference, but it all comes down to timing. We have to guess how long our opponent's bay is going to spend in the middle of the stadium. If it takes them longer to get out of here, then sure, we can take the longer variation. Or if we think they're going to spend more time over here, we're going to take the longer track to avoid them as long as possible. But if we think they're going to get out of the center bowl faster, we need to take the shorter path. So when contact happens, it's up here. We want to make sure that they're contacting us up here so that we get pushed into this wall instead of pushed towards the pocket or the extreme zone here. One other thing that I want to talk about very quickly about the launch is my launch is not very telegraphed, and that's the goal. We don't want our opponents knowing what launch we're doing before the countdown or anything like that. We don't want them adjusting and countering us. Here it looks like I am just doing a regular flat launch here, but on the launch you can see I tilt my launcher as the countdown happens, as I'm pulling. Let's get a good clip of this. Right here, you can see that now my launcher is angled towards the center of the stadium, matching this outside angle, and the Wizard Rod's just going to bounce up onto this outer part of the stadium and do the reverse dash from there. So we want to make sure that we can get our launches off and they're less telegraphed. And like I said, if we mess up this launch, if you can do this launch with light launching, if it doesn't work out properly, maybe you bounce off the rail or something and you end up in the middle of the stadium, well, you still light launched, and that's still a decent defensive strategy. So you always have a fallback. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. We messed up our launch. Oh, now we lose. If we light launch and do the reverse dash together, now we have a fallback plan if the first one doesn't work out. So let's check out the next launch that we have in store. So this next launch that I'm going to be going over for you guys is one of my own personal creations. This is called the bump launch. That's what I'm calling it. It is a stamina or defense type launch. This isn't a launch that really gets used for attack types. We're going to be tilting our launcher towards the inside of the stadium. We're going to lightly push the bay against the inner ridge of the stadium. It's almost going to be like a reverse dash, but instead on the outside where the rail is, we're going to be on the inside with the ridge. You won't have to push nearly as much or even at all from B side because we'll use the natural slope of the stadium to get the movement, but from X side, we're going to need to give the bay a little push to get it from here to here. It's either going to ride the inside of the ridge entirely or be right next to it. We're going to launch around 70-80% power so that the bay has enough momentum to create contact, because that is the goal of this launch. What this launch does for us, we're going to disrupt our opponent's pattern. If they're going to launch in the middle of the stadium, this is going to knock them around. This isn't going to give them a clean way to the X line early in the battle. If we initiate contact up here close to where these two X line, like two sections of X line meet, this is nowhere near the pockets, and most of the time it's going to be sideways, so we're going to be far, far away from the pockets. So this benefits us as a stamina or defense type. I haven't really attempted this launch too much with bits that are low resistance. I don't know if it's too risky to do so, but with things like Hexa or any other high resistance bit that comes out for defense types later, it will be a great strategy to use. If you want to see more clips other than the few that I'm going to show off in this video here, check out the Wizard Rod guide where I use this launch a lot with Wizard Rod on Hexa. That'll be up in the top right corner right here. And without further ado, let's check out some battles. Alright, so for the bump launch, we're going to show off both sides of the stadium using this launch. So this first clip is going to be from B side. I'm here with the Wizard Rod Hexa up against a Shark Scale on Low Rush. Like I said, this launch is commonly used for me by defense or stamina type Beyblades going up against attack types. And all we're trying to do is initiate contact very early in the battle. As we can see, with the B-side bump, we are going to use the natural curvature of the stadium and let it guide our Beyblade down further. It's pretty similar to the forward angle. Like I said, all these more advanced strategies build off of these early basic launches that you learn early into the game. So this one's almost like a forward angle, but instead of starting towards the middle, we're going to start further off to the left of the stadium here, and that's going to let the bay get pulled down into the stadium right where they would come out of the bowl for their first extreme dash. Now, they actually made contact with us pretty early, but it just sent us in the back wall, didn't really do anything to us at all. And now their pattern is disrupted, so now they're not going to be able to really get a good attack off for the rest of the battle. They get one maybe there. They got one other attack towards the back wall again. It positioned us towards the back wall, so we were set up for this the entire time. So we're going to eventually just drain their stamina, and they're going to be done. We'll get to spin finish here with Wizard Rod. And then for our next clip here is going to be from the X side. Now, same bay here, Wizard Rod Hexa going up against a Hover Wyvern on Kick. And seeing how our opponent's launch is pretty flat, this tells me that they're just going to hit the middle of the stadium and they're going to just take a path where they just circle. Oh, that is a very bad circle. They're going to just circle the inside of the bowl here and come out. So I know that the bump launch is online. Basically, it's probably going to work. But if they don't do this, well, like I said before, we always have a fallback built into our launches. So this is just going to give us the same result of a light launch because we're not launching at full strength to do this launch. So if we miss them or they just do something else, we at least light launched, and that's what we're looking for. Now, we are going to see how we disrupt our pattern, our opponent's pattern from this side. So they kind of shot across, but they ended up in the center of the stadium. And we make early contact, and it just throws them around. And now the Hover Wyvern's trapped in the center of the stadium. It never gets a good extreme dash. It never gets a good setup for its attacks like it needs to get a decent hit off against the opponent. So our opponent really never had a chance in this battle because of the launch choice that we made. So that's why this launch is very effective for me. I've used it in so many battles since I started figuring it out. Like I said, if you want to see more battles, check out the Wizard Rod guide. I have a couple more examples of the launch there. And let's check out our last launch. So the last launch I have to present to you guys is something that I've started calling the Sweeper. Now this is an attack style launch that I generally only use from X side. There's some edge cases where I'll try to use this on B side as well, but from B side I feel like using something like a drop launch is a bit more effective here. But what this launch is going to do is they're going to stall right up against the rail over here in this corner, and then after a short period of time your bay is going to come flying down this line and you're going to catch anything that's caught in this upper section of the bowl here, and you're going to be pointing them straight at this over zone. So we're trying to score 2 points with this launch at the beginning of the battle. There's no stall that's very long. It's pretty quick. A lot of people don't expect anything like this, so you'll catch a lot of people off guard doing this. Now, the way you're going to do this is you're going to tilt your launcher very slightly. This is what I find gives the bay the speed that it needs to actually come through the stadium and have enough speed to get a over finish. If you don't tilt enough or tilt at all, sometimes when you stall, once the stall is over, you're just going to fall down very slowly and not really get a good solid hit. And then you're going to try to aim between the ridge and the rail, but you're going to try to get closer to the rail. Now, if you actually end up in this top right corner past the rail, that's okay too. That still aims you at a good line towards this overzone, or sometimes if you get really lucky, you'll catch them earlier and you might get them into the extreme if you hit them hard enough. But mainly trying to get within this, we're going to try to stall up against the rail here. Now, what this launch does for us, like I said, it's going to sweep through the center of the stadium and aim them towards this overzone here. And it's going to dodge. You can use this to dodge attacks early. So if you think your opponent is going to be throwing their bay directly across the stadium, instead of trying some risky maneuver like a reverse dash or a slide drop that could get interrupted through their uh, hard angle through the middle, we can just simply move our bay to the right and just dodge that attack and just go from there. Like I said, there's some very small edge cases we do this on B side. The issue with doing this launch on B side is that when you're done stalling, your your initial sweep through, for one, is arced this way, so you're actually not going to be pointing them towards this pocket most of the time. You might glance them away from it or push them towards the wall instead, and you have to fight this inner ridge. When the bay drops down from this inner ridge, sometimes it'll actually catch the ridge here and you'll just do some weird flat launch pattern. It's not going to be very ideal. That's why I do it from X side, because on X side, when your right spin bay comes down, it's going to come through this section without a ridge or a very short one, so you're not going to get interrupted. Now let's show off how the sweeper works. Now, to finish off the clips for the video, we're going to have a couple examples of how the sweeper works, and I'm just going to preface this. Like I said at the beginning of the video, Launch Tech isn't going to guarantee wins. We're mainly focusing on what the Launch Tech does in these videos. So the other couple clips in this set here, uh, we're going to have very close calls where we almost get the result where we want, but they're going to pop out of the pockets. But still, most times they're going to stay in there. So this is from B side. I'm on the right here with Aero Pegasus up against Dragoon Elevate, and this is one of the few edge cases where I may use the sweeper launch from B side, and that's just because the left spin bay's pathing is going to be different. They're going to be going this way instead of the other way, so we'll actually be able to run into them depending on how the timing works out. Now, we're just going to start here, and like I said, you're just going to stall up in this top section here. This almost looks like a drop launch from B side, and that's why I say it's almost better to just drop launch generally if you are on B, if you're thinking about using this launch. But since we don't actually stay tucked in this hill very long, we're going to come out of this, and instead of going down, we're actually going to come out further, like more flat like this. So we're going to let this video play, and we're just going to catch the Dragoon on the outside of the stadium, get a clean over finish in the stadium there. Now this sweeper works pretty much where you want it to sit, and we're just going to show off that this is where the contact happens. We started about here, we swept through, and now let's get a better pen on this. So we're going to start here, come down, and like I said, we're going to sweep through this part of the stadium, and they're pointed right towards this pocket over here. They end up ricocheting off of this back wall here and the post to come out of the stadium. So they're going to end up getting a spin finish on us. But just like I said, I've been harping on this a lot. All our launches that we're using have backups. So if you slightly mess up this launch, you're still either going to get a flat launch out of it, or you're going to get a forward angle launch out of it, and you'll still be pretty all right. Now, last one here is same thing. We're on Shark Scale Rush on the X side, and this one is going to show that you can actually end up in this corner and still be fine. So like I said, you don't have to do this perfectly. You just want to be somewhere in this area stalling for a very quick second. So we're going to actually hop up over the rail because of the bounce. Our opponent's going to be lined up right here, and they're going to be shot straight towards the overzone. They actually end up in the pocket, but their 160 ends up saving them. I think my shark scale going over there and hitting them popped them out of the pocket a little bit as well. So this is just a newer launch that I've started using. I think it's very powerful. It's a lot safer than attempting a reverse X dash or a slide drop launch, especially with smash attackers or bays like Shark Scale that don't have to be angled very hard or at all to get decent contact in your opponent. I wouldn't do this with Hover Wyvern. Um, Hover Wyvern has to have that decent angle, so it's much better if it actually gets the time to set up here and do this. But Shark Scale doesn't need to do all that. So instead of risking putting yourself into this pocket here or just doing the launch wrong, getting caught in the center of the stadium the entire time, just doing this very hard sweep through the middle and going from there is a lot more of an efficient play. It's a lot less risky. If it doesn't work out, you only lose the spin finish. It is what it is. But just wanted to highlight how this launch is great on X side. It's very safe. So give it a shot. Let me know how you guys like it. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. I know this is a bit of a long one, so if you made it this far, I really appreciate that. If you haven't already, make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to catch up on some of my other content, check out the playlist on the screen or the video. And if you want to, check out my Medify link in the description below for some coaching or some extra content. I'll catch you guys in the next one.